Hey, welcome back to the Terms and Conditions. My name's Martha, and I wanted to sit down today and do an episode on harassment and the ways in which people enact gendered behaviors in public, um, and things that aren't necessarily seen as harassment by men or people who aren't, educated about these kinds of processes and these kinds of behaviors, but things that we need to be educating our kids about and like educating ourselves about. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I wanted to like weave in a little bit of a personal narrative that happened to me and has like inspired this episode, which happened last weekend. It's now Thursday, so it happened like, a good few days ago. But I went out with my housemate on a Sunday in London to go to a women's march. I think it was called March for Women or something like that, and it was for International Women's Day, which we've had this week. And we were in a Pret, in like a cafe, getting lunch before we were going to go to this march. And this guy came up to us in Pret, and basically just started like talking to us about his life and saying, like he was so busy and like he had all this stuff to do. And we were sitting at this table, and he was quite tall, and it definitely felt quite overbearing. And my housemate and I were having like a perfectly lovely conversation, and I've recently moved in, so it's a process to like get to know each other, and so we've been getting to know each other and like hanging out. And yeah, this guy sort of intruded on our conversation and just started talking about himself and then asking us questions and asking where we were from and talking about London. And he was like, I'm from London, like you're gonna be so disillusioned with it, and like you're gonna hate it eventually. And we were just, there was kind of no way for us to get out of the conversation. And he asked my housemate where she was from. She said Canada. And he said, "Oh, you look like you're from London to me. Like you must be from London." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Because like I wasn't going to correct him. I didn't want to engage, and we weren't engaging. We weren't asking him questions or like provoking this in any way. And eventually he kind of got himself together, and he's like, "Right, I'm gonna head off." I said, "Okay, bye." And he was like, "That was quick. Like, are you trying to get rid of me? Like, are you in such a rush to like get rid of me?" And there kind of wasn't anything we could say. He went out to shake my hands, and I just like ignored it. And I really just felt like saying, "Do you know what, mate? Like, this is like we're having a perfectly nice conversation. We haven't asked you to come up to us and talk to us. We don't want to talk to you. You're not our friend. You're a stranger in a cafe. Can you just fuck off?" Essentially, like that was really what I wanted to say. But of course, I've had plenty of chats with my mum who used to live in London, and lots of people. Like it's kind of common sense that you don't retaliate and you don't say anything back. Basically, like out of the fear that like something might happen, and I have no way of knowing if he was malicious or if he had any intent to like do any harm to me or my housemate. But if I'd been sitting there alone, it potentially could have been a more dangerous situation. If I'd retaliated and spoken up and said, "You know what, mate, can you just leave us alone?" Then he might have got violent or aggressive or like, just shouted a bit. You kind of never know. And it's sparked this idea in me about harassment and what constitutes harassment. And the way I've sort of characterized it and thought about it is it's kind of any approach towards, it's usually young women, or just women in general. It's I have no doubt that it happens to men as well, but to a lesser extent. When we sort of, like the most sort of typical public sexual harassment, what I consider harassment is like the stereotype of tradies and like construction workers, wolf whistling at women. And and it kind of it's usually one like active participant who's doing the shouting or the advance, and then the intended receiving party is just like having none of it. And I mean, it kind of ranges from a catcall to like just to sort of look up and down, checking someone out. And then it kind of escalates a bit to cornering or following someone. And then at the extreme end of the spectrum, it's kind of violence, rape, sexual assault of some kind, or just like assault in general, and kind of escalated violence, like a violent act. And so while I don't think that a catcall or, talking to someone in a cafe and like bearing over them and like engaging in a one-sided conversation, I don't think it's the same thing as rape, obviously, but I think it's kind of it's a symptom of a larger problem. It's kind of men typically using their space in society and using the power that they've been given by the patriarchy to kind of make women engage with them. And they kind of take advantage of the fact that they kind of know either instinctively or explicitly, like they have this like this notion, they know that women can't retaliate, they can't say anything, they don't feel any threat by a young woman in a public space. And in fact, like the reverse is true, where a woman, even if it's just like a friendly conversation, even if there's no malice or threat, a young woman can feel threatened by that. And I've had interesting conversations with women in my life. Some people think that catcalls and like being whistled at by men on the street or whatever is a flattering thing. And like to a degree, I get that, and I kind of used to think that a little bit. I used to think like, oh, like I'm obviously doing something right, like my curves are on show, or like whatever it was. But now I kind of like have this idea that it is just like a smaller symptom of a larger problem, and so I just can't see it in the same way anymore, and I sort of urge you guys to like think about it in that way. And the thing about this, I keep using the term harassment because that's just the way I've been like, I've learnt to think about it. But it's really any sort of engagement from like a stranger. I'm talking like public harassment. I'm not talking like, someone harassing you. I'm talking like a member of the public, a stranger, wolf whistling, catcalling, cornering, raping, like strangers. I'm not talking about like domestic abuse and like people being assholes, even though that is a problem. But most of it isn't about the subject. Most of it isn't about like the woman that you're catcalling. It's about impressing your friends. Like, if you think about that typical example of like a construction worker, it's about like proving your masculinity and your heterosexuality to your friends and being like, yeah, like I think that chick's hot, like aren't I cool now? Like, can I hang out with you guys now? We can talk about chicks and tits. Like, it's just about proving masculinity and like proving that element of masculinity, which is like really high sex drive, really heightened aggression, and determination to like follow through with that sex drive. And it's about the self. It's about it's about proving something. And this guy in the cafe the other day, like, he wasn't like intruding on us. Like, well, he was intruding on us, but he wasn't like asking us deeply personal questions or like, there wasn't anything sexual about it. But he just like wanted to talk about himself. He just wanted someone who was like forced to sit there and listen to him, essentially. I'm like, mate, get a therapist. Like, everyone has a fucking therapist. Like, whatever. And then, ironically, this is one of the best bits about it. He said, where are you ladies off to today? And we said, oh, we're going to the Women's March. And he's like, oh, is that like a Trump thing? And we're like, no, it's a women's thing. And I suppose in some ways it is a Trump thing because he hates women. But it's a women's thing. And he said, oh yeah, women, they have it so tough in society, man. Like, people just go up to them all the time and like, proposition them and like, ask if they want to see their dick and like all this stuff. We were like, yeah, can you imagine if someone just like came up to you like randomly on the street and like, took up your time? Can you imagine? And he was just so obtuse and like so unaware that like I honestly thought he just thought we'd been best friends for years or whatever. Anyway, so I want to talk about intent because obviously, well, not obviously, but this guy might have been like perfectly harmless. He just wanted to like have a chat with someone. And I get that. Like, I understand that it's a problem in society that where we don't talk to each other as much as we used to. And like everyone sits on the train and they just like do their own thing and just stare off into space and like don't make eye contact with anyone. I guess that's sad. And there are spaces in society where you can like have sort of friendly conversation if everyone's I've been known to like, strike up conversation in the queue for something or like waiting to pick up a coffee or like, just making a joke about some shared experience that you're having with someone in a public space. And I understand, the need for that and the need for like human connection, especially in big cities. Like it can be really stressful and it is a rat race. But at the same time, like there's a way to do that where you're not threatening anyone, and I think whether you realize it or not, and I think people need to be, men especially, need to be more aware of what women especially deal with and the threats that they face, and how they have no way of knowing what someone's intent is when they come up to them. They could just want to have a really nice chat about like the weather and like, where are you from? Like, that's fine. Like, obviously that's not offensive. That's not going to hurt anyone. But, you just can't know. There have been so many terrible cases of, women being dragged around alleys and like, raped or kidnapped or killed or, whatever. Like we kind of have to just assume the worst, like better safe than sorry. And that's why women tend to need to be cagey. And it's not because we're bitches or we're rude or whatever it is. It's because we have to be careful. We've seen enough examples of women who were careful and then still had something happen to them that we just have to be on our guard all the time. And that hasn't changed. That's something that my mum talks about, that she saw for years in London as well, and it happens everywhere. It happens all over the globe, and it's terrifying. So I mean, women, they can't know what someone's intent is, and they can't retaliate. It is this gendered narrative, right, of like men approaching women, because women know that, well, men know that if a woman isn't going to come up to them necessarily and like pick a fight with them and then drag them into an alley and rape them, because it just doesn't happen. It's not a narrative that happens in society. It's because of the way, gender is structured, like it just doesn't happen. But when it's the reverse, when it is a man sort of approaching a woman, women can't retaliate. If I had stood up then and said like, you know what, mate, like we're having a conversation, can you just leave us alone? Like even if I'd said it that and I hadn't sworn or I hadn't, got angry and just said, look, mate, like thanks, this has been a great chat, but like we want to get back to it now. Like who knows what could have happened? And in big cities or small cities, whatever, like you don't know if people are on drugs or like have mental illness that affects their capacity or like whatever it is. And so men take advantage of knowing that we can't retaliate and we can't stand up for ourselves in these public spaces. and they take advantage of that whether they know it or not. And they use it as a space for their own personal goals. They use it as a space to explore their gender identity, or their relationship with their friends, or or just like talk about their day and like talk about what they're experiencing in the world. And so here are my solutions, right? I try and provide solutions, because otherwise it's just a rant of me being like, how terrible is the world? Doesn't the world suck? So first of all, we need to create spaces for men to talk about their feelings and talk about their understandings of masculinity, and do it in a way that is safe, that doesn't endanger anyone and doesn't threaten anyone, and allows them to like, explore these feelings in a really healthy way, with someone who wants to listen, who wants to hear it. I think that's sort of, that's big structural stuff. Also, we need to teach boys about their behavior, the space they take up in society, how women feel around them. So obviously we need to be teaching the next generation of boys especially not to, assault partners and hit their partners, not to rape women, like basic fundamental stuff. And that's happening. We're seeing big structural changes in the way that parenting is done now. Instead of teaching young girls, keep your keys in between your fingers when you're walking to your car so you can scratch a man's eyes out, or like, I can't even remember what that 4-step self-defense thing is, but it's like foot, groin, neck, eyes, or something. Instead of teaching girls that, we need to be teaching our boys, don't threaten women, don't assault women. Like, it doesn't matter what a woman's wearing, if she's wearing a short skirt, if she's, smiling, if she's whatever, like if a woman's wearing headphones and she can't hear you come up behind her, like we need to be teaching boys, just don't assault women, like straight up. And then as soon as that culture changes, women will feel more comfortable around men because they won't feel threatened. At the moment, the threat is too real for women to like really relax and be like, oh, a stranger, like I'm happy to chat to a stranger, no worries. I truly believe that as we see rates of rape decline and rates of violence against women decline, we will see an increase in sort of public friendliness, because there's that trust, right? Like at the moment, there's just no trust. And there's a very good reason for that. Like I shouldn't be expected to trust anyone, because it hasn't been proven to me that people can be trusted. In fact, it's been disproven to me repeatedly. That's pretty personal though. If you want me to tell you some stories of like how terrible people are, hit me up. Wow, I think that's it. It's been lovely to like come back and do some podcasting. I've decided to ditch the idea of like vlogging on YouTube, because I just found I was way too intimidated to like sit down and record because my hair wasn't perfect. But now you can't see me and I'm not wearing any makeup and I'm in my track pants and like I'm perfectly happy with that. And it just works better, I reckon. Yeah, okay. I think that's it for this week. I'm hoping to do like a backlog of podcasts before I start my new job, so that I can like keep releasing content on a pretty regular basis. Awesome. Okay, if you liked this, please rate and review in the iTunes store. I'm working on getting this uploaded to Spotify as well, but it's on SoundCloud. So yeah, feel free to head to my website, thetermsandconditions.net. And all of my social media will be on there. I don't know, like, thanks so much for listening, and hopefully I'll see you next time on the Terms and Conditions. Okay, bye!